Oklahoma did not lose a single non-conference game last year, but Gonzaga's elite front court will challenge that on Saturday.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Happy Friday, folks. It is a game preview episode today as we get ready for Gonzaga's matchup on Saturday night against the Oklahoma Sooners. We're going to talk about Porter Moser's new look team, 4 transfers starting for them in their first game back on Monday. We're also going to talk about our 5 keys to victory. What does Gonzaga need to do to make sure that they hand this Sooners team a loss at the Spokane Arena on Saturday night? We're going to close out the show moving over to the women's basketball side, where they're playing their first game of the season on Friday afternoon at North Dakota State. We're going to talk about that game to close out the week. All right, we're going to start, obviously, with this Gonzaga game against Oklahoma on Saturday, the first of many marquee matchups for Mark Few and the Zags this year. The game Saturday, November 8th, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. So as I do often on these late games, give a shout out to those New York listeners. I know plenty of you out there on the East Coast. Going to be a late one. Going to have your second, third, maybe fourth cup of coffee to make sure you're tuning into this one at 10:30 Eastern time. The game, of course, being played at the Spokane Arena, so it is a neutral site game, but obviously an advantage for Gonzaga being about a mile from campus, especially for a team like Oklahoma traveling a pretty long ways to come out to this game. The game will be broadcast on ESPN2 for those who have it. I believe it'll also be available on ESPN Plus for those who watch there as well. Gonzaga's 3-1 all time against the Sooners of Oklahoma. All of the matchups coming since 2007. They lost the first game back in 2007, but then they beat them at the Spokane Arena in 2009. They also played them in the Old Spice Classic in 2012, got a W there, and then most recently played them in the 2021 NCAA tournament. Interestingly enough, they played Oklahoma and Creighton consecutively in that NCAA tournament and are doing so again with Creighton coming to Spokane for that game against Tuesday. Gonzaga obviously also played UCLA in that NCAA tournament, who they are going to play again this year, and also played Baylor in that NCAA tournament, who they were expected to play this year, but that game did not end up happening. This is the one of 3 games against SEC teams for Gonzaga this year. They're also playing Alabama in the Players Era Festival, and of course they're playing Kentucky in Nashville as part of that 6-year series agreed to with John Calipari before he left for the job at Arkansas. They could end up playing 4 teams in the SEC. Gonzaga could, because they are playing at least one more game in the Players Era Festival. The opponent is to be determined, but it is possible it ends up being either Auburn or Tennessee, who are both part of that event. So Gonzaga could end up squaring off against the SEC 4 different times in the non-conference, and of course could end up seeing an SEC team or 2 in the NCAA tournament as well. We're going to meet this Oklahoma team. The Sooners 1-0 on the year. First win was over a team, St. Francis, that is ranked 348th at KenPom, so one of the 20 lowest ranked teams in all of college basketball. Oklahoma did what you'd expect them to do, when the final score being 102-66 in this game. However, they really struggled, and most teams are struggling in the first 8 minutes or so. Like the amount of games at the under 12 media timeout in the first half that have been a little too close for comfort. Gonzaga had this against Texas Southern, but pretty much every power conference team has had a lull at the beginning of the season. However, Oklahoma went into halftime only up 1 point. It was 45-44 at halftime in this game. Oklahoma blasted them in the second half, 57-22 advantage to come up with a W, but you can't feel great if you're Oklahoma about a 1 point halftime lead over a team ranked 348th at KenPom, but certainly you got to feel good about at least responding positively and still getting a commanding victory. KenPom has the Sooners 56th overall in the country, 40th in adjusted offensive efficiency, 81st in adjusted defensive efficiency, tempo-wise, right in the middle, a little on the faster side at 141, but still not a particularly speedy team in terms of their projected tempo. We've only had one game to really get a sense of this team's tempo in particular, especially since it's a very new look group. This team went 20-14 last year. That included going 13-0 in the non-conference, which included winning the Battle for Atlantis, a tournament that Gonzaga was obviously in and could have lined up against Oklahoma. It did not happen. Oklahoma beat Providence. They beat Arizona and Tommy Lloyd, and they beat Pat Kelsey at Louisville. So a lot of people looked at Oklahoma's 13-0 record in the non-con, looked at their 6-12 record in conference play, which is shocking that a team that went 6-12 in their league made it to the NCAA tournament. But it is worth acknowledging that Oklahoma got some really good wins in the non-conference portion of the season. They beat those three teams. They beat a couple other power conference teams as well. This was a strong team last year, earned a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then was within a few possessions of taking down UConn. It was 67-59 was the final score. UConn, of course, advanced and then gave Florida everything they could in the round of 32. But again, it's a new look. Looking at last year's team, not want to say it's irrelevant necessarily. The narrative still exists, but 4 of the 5 starters are new for Porter Moser and the Sooners this year. The only returner is Mo Wagee. He is their starting center. In their first game against St. Francis, he had 16 points, 10 boards, and 3 blocks on 7 of 11 shooting, but he was not nearly that effective and impactful last year. He averaged just 4 points and 3 rebounds in 33 games, only started 4 games, so he's stepping into a much bigger role for Oklahoma and will face his first really big test as the team's starting center on Saturday. The 4 transfers that make up the rest of the lineup, the starting 5 for Porter Moser and Oklahoma, include power forward Tay Davis, a transfer from Notre Dame who averaged 15-5 last year with the Fighting Irish. He had 14-8 in their first game against St. Francis. Davis is also very good at getting to the free throw line, so that's a big thing to watch out for in this game. Small forward is Darion Reed from Alabama. He had 7 points, 3 boards, 3 assists in their first game and averaged 6 points in about 14 minutes per game last year for the Crimson Tide. He was also dealing with a midseason injury, which slowed his development, but a high-profile sophomore and a potential breakout candidate for Oklahoma. And then the 2 guards, Xzayvier Brown from St. Joe's and Nigel Pack from Miami. Xzayvier Brown had 16-6 with 3 steals in their first game. He was a monster last year for St. Joe's. 17.6 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.5 steals. One of the most purely dominant, productive players in college basketball last year. And again, the A10 is on par with the WCC. This is a very, very good league, and Xzayvier Brown was excellent. He is small. He's 6'2", so he's an undersized 2-guard, but he is a really good player and going to be an issue for Gonzaga on both sides of the basketball. And then you have Nigel Pack. Nigel Pack feels like he's been in college basketball for an extremely long time because he was at Kansas State. He transferred to Miami. He was very controversial as one of the first big NIL players. I think it came out that he was making $400K at Miami, which was a really big deal at that time. It's funny now that does not seem like as big of a deal, but Pack's a very, very good player. 16-3-3 for him in Oklahoma's first game, averaged 13.5 points, shot 38.5% from 3 last year for the Canes on 6 attempts per game. The talent is unquestionably there for Oklahoma. They have decent depth as well, but this is a very new look roster. And the big question for them is, can things come together in time to take down a very good Gonzaga team on the road? And this lines up to be a potentially very, very important and promising game for Gonzaga. I am not saying Gonzaga's for sure going to win or anything like that, but there's a pretty good chance that Oklahoma ends up better metrically and better on the resume perspective later in the year when they have gelled, when these players have come together, when they are not dealing with some injuries. And if Gonzaga does win this game, this win could age very well for them. We, of course, said this about Baylor last year, and Gonzaga beat the doors out of Baylor, and we thought that's going to age great, and it did not. So it's not a guarantee by any stretch, but it does feel like this is the kind of game that could be a really nice boost on what's almost certainly going to be a fine, solid resume for Gonzaga, but never hurts if you can get a W in a game like this. And again, for Oklahoma, we mentioned some of the injury stuff. They don't have a ton of depth, and I think that's a big question mark for this team. Where is that depth going to come from? They only had 3 players who played more than 2 minutes off the bench, and that was in a game, again, it was close in the first half, but They were up by 35, 40-ish points in the second half, and they still only played 8 guys outside of a handful of minutes at the very, very end of the game. So that's a question. They were missing their freshman big man, Kai Rogers, who is not expected to play against Gonzaga. That's really challenges their front court depth. They're also missing Jaden Jones, transfer from Long Beach State, averaged 12 points per game for the Beach 2 years ago and transferred to Oklahoma and sat out all of last year. He also missed their first game of the season, and his status to make his Oklahoma long-awaited debut is up in the air for the game on Saturday against Gonzaga. Well, Gonzaga's going to have to lock down the perimeter. There's a lot of really good shooting on this Oklahoma roster. They also got to win the battle of the boards in order to leave the arena with a W on Saturday. We're going to discuss that and other keys to a victory for the Zags coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, it's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more each time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down for Gonzaga. It's Tyon Grant-Foster. He delivered in a big way. He had 15 points in his first game in a Gonzaga uniform on Monday, and that was without even expecting to be in the starting lineup. It was a last-minute thing, a clerical error. He starts for Gonzaga, drops 15 points, leads the team. Just like Grant-Foster delivered for the Zags, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. So order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, and fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. Today's episode is also brought to you by Doer, folks. I've always had issues finding jeans that are actually comfortable enough for me to wear. Long time problem for your boy. And that's why I'm so excited to get my new pair from Doer. This local company has the most comfortable jeans, no matter what style you like and for any occasion, whether it's a quick trip to the grocery store, a night out with your friends, a trip to the Kennel or the Spokane Arena, all of that. Doer jeans have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim, and they're antibacterial, meaning your jeans stay fresh longer so you can wear them more and wash them less. Doer is also made with Cool Max that regulates your body temperature and wicks moisture to keep you cool and comfortable as the temperature changes. Doer are pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. In fact, they invented the original performance denim. So simply put, Doer makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. So get a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go now to shopdoer.com/lockedonseattle and you'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopdoer.com/lockedonseattle for 15% off. Shopdoer.com/lockedonseattle. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And we are still getting you ready for Saturday night's epic matchup with the Sooners of Oklahoma. Again, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time at the Spokane Arena on ESPN2. We talked about Oklahoma in the first segment, new look roster, 4 new starters, some depth concerns for this team. And now going to take a look at our 5 keys to victory. And again, if you listened to the show on Monday, or if you listened last season, you know that we do these game previews. We always do either what to watch for or keys to victory. In this case, since it's going to be a tough game against a good opponent, we're looking more at what does Gonzaga need to do to make sure they walk away with a W on Saturday. Number 1 is pretty simple. Gonzaga needs to lock down the perimeter. Perimeter defense has been an issue for Gonzaga for a very long time. It has never been a strength, not never, it has rarely been a strength for Gonzaga defensively. We saw it really, really crescendo last year in that Santa Clara game where the wings just were pinching in on screens and allowing open shooters, and Tyree Bryan and Adama Alpha-Ball and everybody else just went absolutely nuclear shooting the ball for Santa Clara. This could happen against Oklahoma if Gonzaga is not careful. This team has very, very good outside shooters. Nigel Pack is a career 40.4% three-point shooter. He's made over 300 threes in his career, and he's made them at an over 40% clip. Similarly, Xzayvier Brown, the transfer from St. Joe's, is a career 37.7% three-point shooter, and he has made over 350 career threes. That's 2 guys in their starting backcourt with over 600 career makes and a combined average of just about 40%. Those dudes can absolutely light it up from beyond the arc. They also have Dalton Forsythe coming off the bench. He's only taken 53s in his career because he's only played one season, but he has made them at a 44% clip. So another strong shooter for this team. They weren't great against St. Francis. As a team, they shot 11 of 30, which is 36.7%. I say not great. That's pretty good. 11 made threes is solid. 19 misses is kind of a lot. But the fact that they took 33s against a team like St. Francis, they're going to be looking to shoot the rock a lot in this game. Gonzaga needs Emmanuel Innocente to have a great game on the perimeter. They need the length of Jalen Worley and Tyon Grant-Foster to be crucial in this one. But more than that, those guys are good defenders. They're going to play good defense. We know that. What we need is Braden Smith to play good defense on the perimeter, Mario Saint-Supery to play good defense on the perimeter, Adam Miller and Steele Venters. Like, if those guys are not contributing defensively and giving up open looks from three, Mark Few's going to have some decisions to make because he's got good defenders on the bench. And if he's not playing those, he needs to play the guys who are going to prevent these guys from scoring, even if that gives them a little less offensive punch. It's going to be a fun and fascinating kind of chess match in terms of how Gonzaga mixes and matches to prevent this team from scoring while also making sure they have enough scores on the floor as well. Number 2 for Gonzaga and our keys to victory, get into Oklahoma's front court depth, or really their lack of front court depth. Mo McGee, their starting center, has always been foul prone. He was at Alabama before he was at Oklahoma. This has always been a thing for him. He averaged like 2.5 fouls per game last year in like 12 minutes. Like, he picks up a lot of fouls. Meanwhile, Graham Ike, incredibly good at getting fouled, incredibly good at drawing contact, ducking his body, getting those arms to be leaning over him, and then throwing his arms into the contact in order to get fouled. It is a tough skill. It is a skill that Graham developed over time and is now masterful at. It is also, incidentally, not a skill that Braden Huff has developed yet. It's not that he can't. It's not that he won't, but he hasn't really shown that yet. The free throw disparity between Graham Ike and Braden Huff in what has otherwise been, Graham's been better than Braden, but on a per minute basis, they're fairly close. They both score a ton around the rim. They're both highly efficient. The major differences between Graham and Braden in their production the last couple of years has been rebounding, which we'll talk about in a second, and getting to the free throw line. Braden Huff's ability to get to the line in this game is critical. If he can draw some contact, particularly from Davis, and if Graham can get Mo McGee in foul trouble, there's not a lot of depth behind them. Again, we're expecting Kai Rogers, 6'10" freshman, 4-star, like I think he was the 10th or 11th ranked center in the entire 2025 recruiting class. The expectation is that he's not going to play. Porter Moser has described him as day-to-day. I'm recording this on Thursday afternoon, so it's possible that changes. But all indications that I have seen are that Kai Rogers will not play. If that's the case, the depth outside of McGee and Tay Davis is pretty weak. They have a redshirt freshman named Qualitak. He played really well in their game against St. Francis, so I don't want to discount him. He's 6'9". He is their backup 5 right now without Kai Rogers in the mix. But he only played one collegiate basketball game, and it was against St. Francis. So we haven't seen him and what he can really do yet. But if Gonzaga can force him to be on the floor a lot and force their defenders to have to play a little bit more tentative because they're already in foul trouble, that's a huge potential advantage for the Zags. Number 3 goes alongside that, dominate on the glass. This Oklahoma team was out-rebounded by St. Francis in the first half. It was 20-19. Now, they made an adjustment at halftime, ended up out-rebounding them by 23-13 in the second half of that game, and also just made pretty much all their shots in the second half, so they didn't need to, but that is a big area that Gonzaga needs to take advantage of. You got to limit Oklahoma's second chance opportunities, and you got to make sure you get yourself some second chance opportunities. Graham Ike is a great rebounder. We're not worried about Graham. He's going to battle it out with Mo McGee all game long. He's going to neutralize him, and he's going to be cleaning up on the glass. Where Gonzaga needs to find their advantages from Braden Huff, who, again, is now entering the starting lineup, is now playing power forward. And while Braden Huff is taller than both Ben Gregg and Michael Ejim, you might think, oh, Gonzaga is going to be better rebounding. Both those guys are better rebounders than Braden Huff. Again, that doesn't mean Braden can't become a good rebounder or a better rebounder this year, but Michael Ejim was a phenomenal rebounder. He wasn't great at anything else in a Gonzaga uniform, but he was great at that. Ben Gregg is a great rebounder, particularly on the offensive glass. Gonzaga needs to dominate on the glass in this game with those two guys, but also they need their wings to rebound. Tyon Grant-Foster is a great rebounder. He is a great offensive rebounder for a wing. He needs to go out there and do it and prove it. He's 5 years older than Darion Reed, the starting small forward for Oklahoma. Use your expertise, use your experience, use your old man strength, and push him around, get yourself some rebounds. This same goes for Steel Venters. The same goes for the rest of Gonzaga's wings and backcourt. Like they got size pretty much everywhere. Even the Adam Miller, Braden Smith backcourt, which is not particularly big, is bigger than Nigel Pack and Xzayvier Brown. They need to be able to clean up on the glass, have a big advantage there. If they win the rebounding battle by 8 or more, I'd be stunned if they didn't also win the game. Number 4, it's not really a key as much as it's going to be a trial by fire for Gonzaga's point guards. This is a huge X factor in this game. Gonzaga's playing Braden Smith in his second game in a Gonzaga uniform and Mario Saint-Supery in his second game in a Gonzaga uniform. Now, Braden Smith has at least played collegiate basketball and spent a year in this system as a redshirt. Mario is playing his second ever college basketball game and has only been in the system for a couple of months and missed part of that time while with Eurobasket. I'm not worried about the talent level. These two guys are both great, but they have showed some glimpses and flashes in the exhibition games and the Texas Southern game, but frankly, it has not been Gonzaga's strongest position group to date. And they are playing a team that has great guards. I have talked at length about Nigel Pack and Xzayvier Brown. These two players are really, really good. They form one of the 25 best backcourts in college basketball, maybe 20. One of the 5 best backcourts in the SEC. And that feels crazy to say because of Arkansas's backcourt and Kentucky's backcourt and Alabama's backcourt and Tennessee's backcourt. And there's a lot of really good teams in that conference and really good backcourts, but Oklahoma's is one of the better ones. And they're also a really veteran group. Nigel Pack's been in college basketball for a long time. Xzayvier Brown's a senior. That is an old group in Oklahoma's backcourt, an old, really good shooting group. And if Smith and Mario are still figuring things out, if Mario's still struggling with the officiating of college basketball and getting himself in foul trouble, there's not a lot more time to figure it out. You need it in this game. You need it in the game against Creighton. Yeah, after that, we'll see Arizona State. They can probably get by with their front court, and you get the Campbells and the North Floridas of the world. You can win those games, but this is a game that you really need these two guards to be playing in tip-top shape, and frankly, we haven't seen them do that yet. And then key number 5, let Tyon cook. Tyon Grant-Foster started for Gonzaga on Monday. Again, we've said it a couple of times. It was not intentional, but he played really well. He led Gonzaga with 15 points. He was a menace on the offensive glass. He got the team out in transition. Every time Tyon Grant-Foster touches the basketball, his goal is to get as close to the rim as possible. And I love that because Gonzaga ostensibly had that player last year in Caliph Battle. But if we're being honest, Battle was pretty inconsistent with that role. Some games he was relentless, constantly going at the rim or constantly pulling up and just looking to score and score and score. And some games he vanished. Gonzaga doesn't need Tyon Grant-Foster to vanish. They need him to shine. They need him to cook. And yes, he's not ready. And yes, Mark Few alluded to that after the Texas Southern game, said, hey, he's still figuring things out. It's a slow process. He hasn't gotten a lot of time. He's learning multiple positions. Really kind of made it seem like, hey, we're a ways away from him being, where we need him to be. I don't know if that's a smokescreen. I don't know if that's genuine. I don't know if he's saying that, but still going to play him. It's not like they're going to just bench him. But I would be concerned if Gonzaga's thought process around Grant-Foster was, well, until he's fully kind of acclimated to the system, we're going to put him out there, but we're going to, kind of scale back what he can do. No, don't do that. In my mind, don't do that at all. Let him out there and just let him go. Let him go. Because what he does just naturally as a basketball player is going to be a challenge for Oklahoma to defend. Let him go out there and try to drive on people. Let him go out there and try to get to the rim. Let him go get fouled and get to the free throw line. Let him be a pesky workhorse defender. He might make some mistakes. If he's really struggling, you got depth. You can go to Venters and Miller and Innocente and Fogel and everybody else and be fine. But I think you got to let Tyon cook in this game and see if he can create some serious matchup disadvantages against this Oklahoma team because they don't really know how to scout him because he's playing a different role than he did at Grand Canyon. Well, folks, Lisa Fortier and the Zag women begin the season tonight on the road against a tough North Dakota State squad. We're going to get you a preview of that game to close out the show and the week coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. And if you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make this whole process even smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We're closing out the show with another game preview here as the college basketball season gets underway. Talk about Lisa Fortier and the Gonzaga women's basketball team. They begin the season tonight on Friday, as many of you are listening to the show, 5 p.m. Pacific time on the road against North Dakota State. The game is featured on the Summit League Network. The Summit League being the conference that North Dakota State is in. Apparently that means it will not be on ESPN Plus. At least it is not indicated that it'll be on ESPN Plus. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the majority of you listening to the show are not currently subscribed to the Summit League Network. Those of you who are, fantastic. You are true college basketball degenerates. Love watching your Omahas and your South Dakota States and your Denvers and everybody else. But if you don't have it, this might be a tough game to watch. Hopefully there will be some video that you can watch somewhere, or you can watch the highlights that the women's basketball social media accounts post. North Dakota State 1-0 on the year. This will be the first game of the season for Gonzaga. North Dakota State beat Northern Iowa 63-49 in their first game. Avery Conan, who is on the Becky Hammon Mid-Major Player of the Year watch list alongside Gonzaga's Allie Turner. Avery Conan was great, 11 points, 15 rebounds on just 3 of 4 shooting. She went 5 of 8 from the free throw line in that game. North Dakota State shot 34% from the field and 25% from 3, however. So holding a team to 49 points, great. But the offense was not particularly good for the Bison in this game. It's a new look group for Lisa Fortier's team and a new look group for North Dakota State. They were picked to finish second in the Summit League behind South Dakota State, who Gonzaga is also playing this year. They will host them in Spokane on November 20th. But North Dakota State did go 21-12 last year, including 11-5 in the Summit League. Meanwhile, for Lisa Fortier, they are entering a new era, the post-Ejim era. Yvonne Ejim, of course, graduates after 5 prolific seasons in Spokane with the Zags, leads as the program's all-time leading scorer and all-time leading rebounder, first only player in WCC women's basketball history with 2,000 career points and 1,000 career rebounds. An absolutely masterful player, fantastic person, really, really big shoes to fill for Gonzaga. And not only did they lose Ejim, they lost her starter in the front court, alongside her in Maud Hybens. They lost guards Taylor Dalton, who was here for 1 year as a transfer from St. Mary's. They also lost Esther Little, who was here for 4 years. They lost Claire O'Connor in the transfer portal to Colorado. They lost Bree Salin-Bien in the transfer portal to Ball State. So lots of holes to fill for this team. They do have some key returners, notably Allie Turner, who shot 45.5% from 3 last year, 105 made threes. I've said this stat multiple times, but I don't get sick of saying it. There are 2 players who have, as pure freshmen in women's college basketball in the last decade, I think in the last six years, I think is what it is, who have made 100 threes or more as a freshman and shot over 40% from 3. One of them is Allie Turner. The other one is Caitlin Clark. That is how good of a shooter Allie Turner is. They also returned Inez Betancourt, who was a valuable player for them last year as a transfer from UConn, 6 points, little under 3 assists per game. McKinley Dowling, a transfer from Minnesota, last year averaged about 3 points, 2 boards in 13 minutes per game. And then they got the transfers. Zia Kuso comes over from St. Mary's. She averaged 9 points, 3.5 assists, shot 35% from 3. She's going to start alongside Turner in the backcourt. Taylor Smith, transfer from Weber State. She had 20 points in Gonzaga's exhibition win over Carroll College. was 12, and I think 12 and a half points per game at Weber State last year. Sierra Lichty, transfer from Cal Poly. She averaged about 10 and a half points and just under 7 rebounds per game last year in the Big West. And then Taryn Gardner, friend of the podcast, she played at Boise State last year. She's from Meade High School in Spokane, though, coming home to play for the Zags after averaging about 3.5 points and shooting 35% from 3 for the Broncos. The big wild card, the big X factor for Gonzaga this year is Lauren Whittaker. I didn't include Lauren Whittaker in the returners or in the transfers or in the freshmen because she's a returner. I was going to say she's none of those things. She's a returner, but she has yet to play. She's actually been at Gonzaga for a year and a half. She joined the team in mid-season 2 seasons ago. Last year, she redshirted. Now she is ready to make her official debut. 6'3" forward from New Zealand. Tons of hype for her. I feel like some of that hype has died down because it's been a year and a half and we haven't actually seen her on the floor yet, but she is a really, really talented post player, great rebounder, good low post scorer, can space the floor a little bit as well. Again, the shoes to fill are massive with Yvonne Ejim, and I think expecting Whittaker to play at that level is setting her up setting you up to be disappointed in her performance, because that's really hard to do. But Whittaker is a potential game changer for Gonzaga. That is the thing I am most excited about on Friday's game, is how does Lauren Whittaker look? Gonzaga, they did not televise their exhibition game against Carroll College, nor did they post a box score. We did see that Whittaker had 12 points and 7 rebounds in that game because it was posted on the post-game press conference or press release, but we didn't get to see any footage of this game outside of a few clips. Coach Fortier's team also played a secret scrimmage and have not revealed any information about that. They are playing things close to the chest, which is what makes this Friday game extra fun, as we get to finally see this team unleashed. What things that they've maybe been hiding, what new quirks are there in their offense, in their defense with such a new look roster, and how is it going to shake out for them this season? We won't get all the answers to that, but we'll get a good sense of that on Friday afternoon out in Fargo, North Dakota. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, a special shout out to those everyday listeners as well. Final show before the game on Saturday. Again, if you are going to be in attendance at the Spokane Arena, let me know. I'm going to be there. I'm so excited. I'm also going to be at the Creighton game at the Kennel on Tuesday. Some really fun stuff. Cannot wait to be out in Spokane watching those games. Should be a lot of fun. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Have a fantastic weekend. And of course, as always, go Zags.